Everyone, welcome back to another Monday makeup lesson. Today I'm going to show you guys how to cover a gigantic blemish. The first thing is to use my Neutrogena Pink Grapefruit Facial Wash. Yes, I am still using that cleanser. I take a little bit of this and apply it onto dry skin and leave it on for a little bit less than a minute. And what this does is just reduce the swelling, keeps the skin really clean and fresh. The other thing is to use Dream Dots. These are really cool. They're like little suction pads for blemishes, and you basically put these on overnight, and when you take them off in the morning, the spot will reduce in the size and also the color. And the third thing is a little bit weird, but you know when your blemishes start to get really dry and you're like, what can I use on these? What I like to use is a medicated lip cream. This is by Blistex, and honestly, it is the best lip cream if you have really dry lips. So when they start to dry and crack, pop a little bit of this on. The tiniest amount is all you need because it kind of burns and it seems to heal up a lot faster just by using this. So those are my favorite tips on how to actually deal with a blemish. But now we're going to move on to actually covering it up. So I've started with clean, moisturized skin, and then I applied my face primer all over my face. But we're actually going to use a separate one for the blemish. We're going to use a pore filling primer. And what this does is just evens out the blemish and gives the makeup something to hold on to. And it will also last a lot longer for you. A tiny amount goes a long way. So put a little bit on your finger, press and swipe over the skin. And you want to blend this kind of around the edge as well. Otherwise you'll end up with a ton of makeup on that one spot and it won't blend with the rest. You want to give this a couple of seconds to settle on the skin, and now we can use a corrector. So the corrector I'm using is a green one. If you have more of a neutral skin tone, you want to use a yellow, or if you have like an olive skin tone, you might even want to try a lilac. So I'm going to apply this with a small detailed brush to just the area that's red. Allow that to settle on the skin and kind of adapt to the skin temperature before you go ahead and use your foundation and your concealer, because otherwise you'll just end up smudging it and moving it around. Now I always get asked, do you conceal first or foundation first? Now it kind of depends on a couple of things. One, it depends on the texture you're using. So if you're using a really mattifying concealer, then a dewy foundation, you need to apply that concealer first, because otherwise your skin all won't look the same tone and texture. If they're exactly the same texture, then go ahead and apply whichever one works for you. I'm going to be using a dewy foundation and then a powder foundation. So if you're using a cream to powder foundation, you definitely want to apply the concealer first, because otherwise it'll go all cakey. So I'm using a full coverage concealer to start with. This is going to go over the top of that corrector, and I'm using a flat topped concealer brush to pat this over the top. We don't want to disturb all the work that we've done already. I want you guys to apply a little extra concealer to just the center of the blemish, kind of a heavier layer. Then once it has time to kind of settle on the skin, you can then slowly start to stipple around the edge. You also want to do a little wiggle with your face, because sometimes blemishes, they're kind of uneven textured and it's hard to get into all the cracks. So when you're applying your concealer, do little wiggling motions with your face, a bit like Bewitched, you know. Just wiggle around, and then you can really stipple onto any areas that might kind of lift and fold as you kind of move and smile throughout the day. Now once that's dried and you want to let that fully dry, you can then go ahead and apply your foundation over the top. You just want to be very careful with this. You want to stipple it over that area. So it's a stippling motion, lifting off and on the skin, applying the tiniest amount of pressure. You shouldn't need too much coverage there, so it's just about evening it out to make sure it blends with the rest of your face. When it comes to setting it in place, I use two different powders. One is completely clear, and I use this on a cotton pad, a clean cotton pad, fold it in half, load it up with lots of that translucent powder, and pack this over the top. Now I prefer using a loose powder because I find the pressed powders, they're a little trickier to apply, so you apply too much pressure, whereas the loose powders, you can be a bit more gentle with it and just kind of pat it in that general area, and it will hold on to the skin. Because with pressed powders, you literally have to press it, and then you could end up lifting all of the work that you've applied. So use a loose powder and pack it over that area and just leave it. Do the rest of your makeup. I then went in with a tinted powder and I buffed this over the rest of my face, and then when I got to that area, I had a very small amount on the brush. I brushed off the translucent powder and then went in with the tinted powder to make sure it blends with the rest of my skin. You also might want to try using a setting spray, particularly because we've used so much makeup on our face. Sometimes it can go a little bit cakey. Once you've sprayed the skin, I set it really quickly just by fanning like this. And that should pretty much last for you for the entire day. However, if you have a very stubborn blemish or your makeup has been on for hours and you're worried that that redness is starting to show through, that's where this comes in handy. So take a little bit more of that L'Oreal True Match on like a blending brush that you use for your eyes. First of all, blot off any excess oil, and apply a little bit of this over the top and done. And there you go, that is how to cover up a blemish. I will see you guys in a video next Monday if you want to let me know what you'd like to see, but I'll also see you guys on Wednesday and Friday before then. Bye guys! Love you guys!